Welcome, welcome everybody to the Week 2 recap show. We're going to go over all the statements and all of the standings, the stats for after Week 2 for the individual players, and we're also going to look at some statements released by the teams, the franchises, and also don't forget to vote for Week 2 MVP of the week. We got William Hillard, Melvin Hudson, and Phil Clemens on the list once again. They were on the list in Week 1. And then we also have Jesse Bonds, Shane Lott, and Mark McCoy making their first appearance for the week MVP. Let's get right into it. So right away, we'll take a look at the first matchup against Hate Club and the Spartans. Anquan Seymour only had 16 points and only threw one touchdown, but Phil Clemens, the running back for Hate Club, had 248 yards and 4 touchdowns, giving him 48 points just by his running back alone. But when you look at the rest of the players, Blaine Strickland got 1 point, and he had 25 points last week, and then he also only got 1 point from his fourth wide receiver, Lawyer Wilkerson, and only finished 99 with 99 points on the week. Hate Club was 1-0, but finishes week 2 1-1, and we have an official statement from the Hate Club. We asked the owner about Thursday night's game between the Vipers and the Lions, about their star running back, and the owner said, again, we have been in love with Clemens for a while. We have tremendous scouts, and they have been proven right. Phil Clemens is an elite athlete. So by that statement alone, looks like the scouts are going to be getting a raise. There are also questions about Blaine Strickland and why he thinks they struggled in Week 2. The statement released by the owner was, our team underperformed. It wasn't just one spot. We expect the best from all of our players, and anything less won't be tolerated. So they didn't blame it on Strickland. They said it was a whole team effort there, which is very good. And they just, again, only scored 99 points, and last week they had a really good outing and scored quite a few points. So big difference from Week 1 to Week 2. Then we'll go back to the weekly standings, and then we will look at impact players here. Impact players came in at 0-1 going against Farvitz, who are also 0-1 in Week 2 of a 5-week regular season schedule. So going 0-2 is very, very rough to get back out of when there's only 5 games in a regular season. So impact players, Taylor Glover had 20 points, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And his wide receiver, Keon Turner, 9 catches and 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, giving him 31 points on the day, and leads the league in catches with 18 catches, Keon Turner, and is looking very, very strong from the Wolverines. But again, when you look at the rest of the players, Josh Buchanan, who won MVP last week, ended the week with only 6 points. The Scorpions were only able to score 10 points against the Tigers, and that was very devastating. There's even rumors going around right now about the Scorpions head coach being fired. And also, when you look at Tiki Carter, 48 yards and only 1 catch for 9 yards, finished with 5 points. That is really, really hard to win when your players are doing that. So here we go. We asked the owner of the impact players about their star wide receiver, Keon Turner, and what he thinks led to Turner leading the league in receptions after Week 2. The statement from the owner, official statement, was, ask my boy Sean Paul, because Keon's hands are like glue. Not too sure what that means, but if you're a Sean Paul fan, I guess you do know what that means. And Keon Turner is leading the league with 18 catches. So I guess you can say whatever you want. Media also was very eager now to ask the owner about Tiki Carter's performance, and also on what he thinks of Tiki Carter's recent media post saying that he was frustrated about how the last 2 weeks have played out. The owner put his head down in pure sadness and said that was brutal. And then he followed up, changing his attitude, stating that Tiki Carter will be Week 3 MVP. He has to be. So that is the statement from Impact players. Now let's move this on quickly and move on to the Dog Pound here. Dog Pound was 1-0 coming into the week, going into Balls Deep. 1-0, that was 1-0 as well. It was a big matchup, but the Dog Pound was able to score 181 points. Brendan Platt did not have a great day, had a few bad decisions on the game, and ultimately lost the games to the Sharks, but he still came away with 18 points and 2 touchdowns. But the big story of the day was Shane Lott. 8 catches, 231 yards for 4 touchdowns. Also, Jesse Bonds had a career day with 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 catches for 83 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Those are receiving numbers and running back numbers coming from one player. And then also Mr. Consistent, Melvin Hudson, 5 catches, 189 yards, and another 3 touchdowns, and actually leads the league in receiving touchdowns with 6 catching touchdowns, Melvin Hudson, but we'll go over the stats after we do this. But the big story for the big down player, the player that did not do so well for the Dog Pound, was Tito Snow. Once again, I believe last week he only had 9 points, and this week ends the week with 2 points. So let's take a look at the league news here. We asked the owner of the Dog Pound about their star wide receiver Shane Lott, who led the league in receiving yards in Week 2 with 231 yards and 4 touchdowns. His statement, Dog Pound owner's statement, was, "I'm glad you mentioned that because there was a clear blown pass interference call on him, but other than that, Lott has been a proven figure on and off the field. He has explosive first step off the line and can catch a defense and can stretch a defense to its limits, which he displayed in Week 2. He's looking forward to Week 3 and improving on his development," was the statement about Shane Lott. So you can tell the Dog Pound is very excited about Shane Lott. There was also multiple questions about Tito Snow, referring to his Week 2 numbers, finishing 22nd worst wide receiver in Week 2, and there's only 32 receivers. So is Tito having any off-field distractions that you were aware of, was what one of the reporters asked the owner of the Dog Pound, and he came back with a statement saying, as for Tito, he's had some symptoms that we were concerned with. No, I won't get into that. All we can say is it was COVID-19. On to Week 3. So there are investigations going on with Tito Snow, and it is definitely not true that he has COVID-19, or he would be kicked from the league. But that is not a true statement. Let's move on now. Next player was Balls Deep. We'll take a look at Balls Deep here. They were going against Dog Pound that scored 181 points, and they scored 116 points, coming in 1-0. So they finished the week 1-1, but scored quite a few points, but weren't able to beat the Dog Pound. So they go 1-1. But Mark McCoy, the star for the Balls Deep, threw 447 yards and 5 touchdowns once again, and leads the league in passing touchdowns with 10 touchdowns, and also has the league leading in passing yards. Mark McCoy, absolute stud, did very, very well this week. And also Ryan Dillon with 4 catches, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns, finishing the week with 28 points, is no slouch. But the big story that everyone wants to talk to Balls Deep about, and which put a big shock around the whole league, was Barry Perkins, number 86 wide receiver, number 1 wide receiver for the Dragons, did not get a single catch. The defensive back for the Sharks, basically, they doubled and triple teamed him all game, had a couple targets, but not enough. And Barry Perkins ends the day with a 0, which is unbelievable. The whole league is shocked by that. So let's take a look at Balls Deep statement here. We asked the owner of Balls Deep about quarterback Mark McCoy, who's leading the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns, why he thinks McCoy has been able to keep this level of elite quarterback play throughout the last 2 weeks. The statement was, McCoy's play has been keeping us afloat, but when you're playing from behind a lot, of course you're going to get a bunch of air yards. We need to have collective success to win as a team. And then also media followed up asking a lot of concerning questions about wide receiver Barry Perkins, who was the second best ranked wide receiver of week 1, what his opinion is of what happened against the Sharks and why he finished the game without a single catch. The statement from the Balls Deep was, as for Barry, everyone is surprised. But these games happen, and we blame it on the game flow and the DB coverage. He will come back with a vengeance. So they still have confidence in Barry Perkins, and so they should, because Barry Perkins is an absolute great player, and we are all shocked that he finished the week with a 0. But great job by the Sharks defense. Okay, and then let's go back to the weekly standings here. And we're going to take a look at, I believe it is Favorites is next. They came into the week 0-1, going against the Impact players, who were also 0-1. So this was a very desperate game. Playoffs start early for these two teams. No one wants to go 0-2. But the Favorites were able to win this week and go 1-1. Derek Albright, their star quarterback, threw 375 yards and 5 touchdowns, ending with 45 points. And also there, Mr. Consistent for the Favorites is William Hillard, 167 yards and 3 touchdowns once again by the star running back for the Bears, doing absolutely phenomenal. Also, Des Edwards stole the show from Barry Perkins in the Dragons wide receiving core, where we thought Barry Perkins was going to be the workhorse. Des Edwards actually finished the day with 2 touchdowns, 7 catches, and 93 yards with 28 points. And it was Des Edwards' game to play. Also, Chester Manley, 4 catches, 127 yards, and a touchdown and 22 points. Absolutely incredible performance by Chester Manley. But the big story that everyone is eager to ask the Favorites is about Sleepy Garrett, wide receiver number 88 for the Sharks, finishing the game with a 0. He finished last week one of the best wide receivers. Well, I believe he had 3 touchdowns last week, and then this week not getting a single catch. So let's take a look at the league news about the Favorites. We asked the owner about their star quarterback Derek Albright's 5 touchdown performance in week 2's Thursday night game against the Lions. And the statement was released, we were glad we got him. Also, another hot topic about Sleepy Garrett and how he finished week 1 as the 4th best ranked wide receiver, and now in week 2 he wasn't able to get a single catch. We asked the owner, why do you think that happened? A simple statement was, it was a fluke, was all that was said, and was all that she said, and then immediately changed the subject. So the Favorites are definitely upset about Sleepy Garrett getting 0 catches, but they were still able to win the week. And Derek Albright threw 5 touchdowns, and their running back ran for 3 touchdowns, and their other wide receivers did really well. So the Favorites were able to escape going 0-2 and finish 1-1. And then lastly, we got the Spartans. They were going against Hate Club, who were 1-0, but Hate Club only finished with 99 points. So the Spartans were able to win the week, scoring 164 points. They were 0-1. really close to going 0-2. Finished the week 1-1. Evan Watkins, their star quarterback, threw 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, finishing the week with 40 points. Their running back, also Josh Woods, only had, I believe, 26 yards last week, and then finished this week with 126 yards and a touchdown and a catch with 20 points, fantasy points on the week. Big difference from last week. Also, Jamal Alston, 4 catches, 87 yards and a touchdown. Brent Gibbons, 6 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Rick Martin, 5 catches, 130 yards and a touchdown. Juwan Rucker, 4 catches, 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. Almost every single one of the receivers for the Spartans had a touchdown. It was just the only player that did not score a touchdown was their tight end, Andre Hillard. But besides that, it was a full team effort for the win. So we asked the owner of the Spartans about their quarterback, Evan Watkins, and how he finished with 413 yards and 4 touchdowns week 2. It was a lot of fun, was the statement, to watch him be the player I know he's capable of being, was the official statement released by the Spartans. Then also questions were directed to the owner about tight end Andre Hillard, about why he thinks the 6'7" tight end struggled in week 2. The statement was the game wasn't even close, so the game plan changed when they took the lead. I'm still confident if he gets the reps, he can produce. And that is the week 2 news report from the teams and the statements from the players and the teams. Basically, we're looking at next week is going to be 6 versus 4, which is Spartans versus Balls Deep. And then we're going to have 2 versus 3, which is Impact versus Dog Pound. And then in week 3, we're going to have 1 versus 5, which is Hate Club versus the Favorites. So that's going to be exciting to see these teams come down to it. Hate Club and Favorites are both going to be 1-1 facing each other. So one of those teams is going to be 2-1. And one of them is going to be 1-2, which is going to be real hard to come back from. Also, Spartans are 1-1 going against Balls Deep, who are 1-1 as well. So those are 2 really big games there that are really going to decipher which way it can go. And then Impact players are 0-2 facing Dog Pound, which is 2-0. So that's also a defining game for the Dog Pound, because if they can get a 3rd win, I feel like they can lock up a playoff spot by getting a 3rd win. And also Impact players, it's do or die now for them. They're 0-2. If they go 0-3 and there's only 5 games, I don't think they can get out of it. I really don't think they will. They may lose their chances at the playoffs right here this next week in week 3. So it's a big week for the Impact players and the Dog Pound and everybody. It's obviously only 5 weeks, so every game is very, very important. But for the most part, okay, so let's take a look at the stats of the players for the week. Also, don't forget to vote for week 2 MVP. But let's take a quick look at the stats before we end the video, because we're already at about 18 minutes here. But I hope you're enjoying the week 2 recap show. If you have any suggestions or any things that you want to see, make sure you let me know. But let's take a look at the passing right now. So leading the league in yards is Mark McCoy. Hold on, let me move this logo a little bit here so you can't really see McCoy's face. But anyways, Mark McCoy, 842 yards and 10 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, playing absolutely phenomenal the last 2 weeks, leading the league in scoring points. I know that for sure. We'll take a look at all that after, though, as well. Okay, Tiny Thomas threw 10 touchdowns as well, and no one owns him, but he also threw 7 interceptions, but none of the interceptions are added or minus any points, so he did throw 10 touchdowns and 700 yards, so the man's putting up points. And then Evan Watkins now has 696 yards and 6 touchdowns. Derek Albright, 653 yards and 8 touchdowns. Anquan Seymour, 625 yards and 6 touchdowns. But I know that Anquan Seymour threw 5 touchdowns in week 1. So he could potentially, Seymour, if he had a better game, could easily be there passing Watkins and Albright. And then Taylor Glover's only thrown 5 touchdowns. I know that's good, 5 touchdowns in 2 games technically, but in this league that might not be enough to compete. And then we got Brendan Platt threw 7 touchdowns in 2 games, 545 yards, and then Bill Morris threw 6 touchdowns, 493 yards, and that is the quarterbacks by yardage. And then of course here's by touchdowns. Thomas, Mark McCoy are tied for first place, and then Derek Albright, Brendan Platt, Evan Watkins, Anquan Seymour, and Bill Morris, and then Taylor Glover. Okay, now let's take a look at the running back and the rushing yards. Phil Clemens leads the league in rushing yards with 440 yards at the end of week 2. Then it goes William Hillard, 340 yards. And this is in 2 games. So they're averaging, if you look over here, average per game, Phil Clemens is averaging 220 yards per game. Okay, and William Hillard is averaging 170 yards per game. I know it's only 2 games, but still, they're also averaging 7 yards a carry, 8.8 yards a carry. Absolutely bonkers. And then Jesse Bonds is 3rd in the league, which is very surprising. I know if you ask the Dog Pound that they're not surprised by it, but everybody in the league is surprised by how well Jesse Bonds has been playing. 270 yards is the 3rd running back in yards after week 2. 3 touchdowns, 8.4 yards a carry, and did it in quite a lot of attempts. I know that Dogbound was mentioning for week 2 argument for the MVP for week 2 with Jesse Bonds, because Jesse Bonds did it in quite a lot less attempts, should I say. Though their average is very similar. His yards per game are 135 yards per game, which is no slouch. But he did it in 32 attempts, so that's pretty impressive as well. Then Darren Page is probably the 2nd biggest surprise of the league besides Jesse Bonds, because we knew that Phil Clemens was good. We knew William Hillard was good, but I don't think we knew that Darren Page was this good or Jesse Bonds was this well. Darren Page finishes with 199 yards, 3 touchdowns, 8.2 yards, averaging on 99.5 yards per game, which is absolutely stellar. Then RJ Barber, I'm going to say, this is where we're at the bottom half, top half and bottom half, because there's 8 teams, so the top 4 and bottom 4. So this beginning of the bottom 4 is probably underperforming. 158 yards and 0 touchdowns, 6-yard average per game. But again, 0 touchdowns and 158 yards is not performing in 2 games in this league. Josh Woods had a terrible game in week 1, 26 yards, 20 yards, something similar to that, and then has a good game in week 2. So these numbers do not look good, but this is basically a 1-game performance because he did not do well in week 1. And then again, Tiki Carter. It is just really sad to see Tiki Carter really down here. He's got 81 yards, and his teammate in 1 attempt had a 78-yard rushing touchdown, and Tiki Carter only has 3 more yards than Josh Buchanan on his team with 22 more attempts. So Tiki Carter averaging 3.5 yards a rush is an absolute shocker to everyone, because Tiki Carter is an absolute great player. He's got all the stats, all the abilities, but again, the Scorpions are making bad decisions and giving him only 23 attempts. Andre Bond is the last running back that we need to look at for the Tigers. He's only got 68 yards in 2 games, no touchdowns, 3.2 yard average, and that's no surprise, but he is definitely the worst rated running back, so I'm not surprised that he's at the bottom. But again, 68 yards in 2 games is definitely underperforming. The rest are just the fullbacks just snaking yards, but for the most part, it is the Phil Clemens, William Hillard, and Jesse Bond show. when it comes to the running backs. Okay, now let's move right into the receiving. We'll finish this up real quick. We're already at 25 minutes. Keon Turner leading the league in receptions with 18 catches in 2 games. 9 catches a game, which is really, really great. 191 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaging 95 yards a game, 95.5 yards a game. And then Josh Buchanan, who is also an impact player, is second in the league with catches, with 13 catches, 249 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And he did nothing in week 2. So he could be crushing this if he had a good week 2 outing. And then Darren Linton, who I'm very shocked to see. So clearly Tiki Carter only had 20 attempts all season so far in 2 weeks. But look, they're throwing the ball. Darren Linton and Josh Buchanan have quite a lot of catches. 11 catches, 147 yards, and 1 touchdown. And 2 receivers from the Scorpions are finishing second and third for catches in the league. Then it goes Shane Lott, 10 catches, 281 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and he only had 1 catch for 20 yards in week 1. So that, again, is a little deceiving in 2 weeks because he did all that in 1 game, basically. He's averaging 28 yards a catch, 140 yards a game, but really, those numbers are a little deceiving. And then Sleepy Garrett. Already, look at this. Sleepy Garrett is the 5th best, or has the 5th most catches in the league, and he put up a 0 in week 2. He put up a 0, and he still has the 5th most catches. So he could also he should easily be in second place or beat Keon Turner if he had a big game, right? And then Melvin Hudson, 10 catches, 435 yards, 6 catches, and 6 touchdowns, which actually leads the league in touchdowns, averaging 43 yards a catch and 217 a game. Unreal. Those are Superman numbers. Des Edwards, 9 catches, 120 yards, 3 touchdowns. 9 catches by Sean Anderson, which no one owns. He is leading. Got the most catches by any other tight end, and no one owns him. He's got 99 yards, but no touchdown. Then Juwan Rucker, 9 catches, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Chester Manley, 9 catches, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brent Givens, 9 catches, 209 yards, and 3 touchdowns. This is all in 2 games, guys. CJ Diggs, 8 catches, 183 yards, and a touchdown. 8 catches by Woody Gordon, 100 yards, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Brian Dillon, 8 catches, 174 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Jamal Olsen, 8 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. And the list goes on. John Waters, Rashad Pleasant, Rick Martin. Look at that, Rick Martin. And 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 catches. Barry Perkins. This is what I wanted to see. Darren Perkins got 6 catches, 237 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he put up a 0. So let's go by yards. Here's it. Barry Perkins is still 4th, has the 4th most yards by any other receiver, and he put up a 0. He put up a 0 in week 2. I know I hate this. Sorry if I keep rubbing this in, Balls Deep, but just goes to show how good he really is, because he is in 3rd place, though he put up a 0. And then again, Melvin Hudson leads the league with 435 yards. Shane Lott, these are both dog pound receivers as well. Keep that in mind. So both of his receivers are 1st and 2nd for yards by wide receiver by position. And then Josh Buchanan is 3rd, and he had a terrible week 2 outing. Barry Perkins is 5th or 4th, and he put up a 0. So it just goes to show you that any week anything can happen. We'll go down this list. I'll slowly go down this list, and if anything kind of stands out. But for the most part, you guys can kind of take a look at it, and if you see anything, look at even Sleepy Garrett, top 10 on the list, and he put up a 0. So it just goes to show you anything can really happen, right? And then Jesse Bonds. This is receiving yards, guys. Jesse Bonds is way up there in receiving yards. and he's a running back, and he leads the. What is he, third? He's the third running back for rushing yards, and he's like the 12th or 11th for receivers. So that's going to show you something. Jesse Bonds is a dual threat. He's the little Marshall Faulk, or what's it called, Brian Westbrook of this league. Garrett Spence, he put up a 0 again. He's another player that put up a 0 in week 2. He did all this in week 1. 5 catches, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns in week 1. But yeah, that's pretty much the yards there. And we got starting to see some more tight ends now. Tito Snow here, 4 catches. And now we're starting to see some tight ends and the lower wide receivers. Okay, then we'll look at the touchdowns, and then that's it. Okay, 6 touchdowns by Melvin Hudson leads the league, and then Shane Lott, Barry Perkins. So Barry Perkins is still tied for second. And then Josh Buchanan, Des Edwards, Sleepy Garrett, and then the list goes on for the 2s. And then Brent Givens, there's a few receivers with 3s and 4s, and then 6, and then a bunch of 2s. All right, that's pretty much it. The only other thing I was looking at just for fun was the return yards, though these don't count. Look how many return yards that Rick Martin and these guys were able to pile up in 2 weeks. So it's just insanity. We'll take a look at this next year as well and look at the touchdowns. Rick Martin's had 3 returns for touchdowns in 2 games. Des Edwards and Brent Givens as well, and Juwan Ruckers. But besides that, we can look at the standings for the players. Bears are 2-0. Vipers are 2-0. Everyone else is 1-1, and then Dragons and Wolverines are 0-2. But again, points per game, 118 points in 2 games, 111 points in 2 games, 99 points and 90 points is just absolutely insanity. So these guys are scoring like crazy. And then besides that, we can take a look at the team schedule. So you can take a look here. Bears are 2-0, and then this is their schedule. We'll slowly go through the schedule. You can take a look at it while I give a little chit chat, and then we'll end. But make sure that you guys vote for week 2 MVP. But these are the last weeks here for the teams. You can take a look at them. Lions seem to have a nice schedule coming up, playing the Dragons and the Wolverines still. Scorpions have to play the Vipers, actually. Scorpions versus the Vipers in the championship week, in week 7, so that's something to keep in mind. Scorpions versus the Sharks in week 5, which would be a big playoff week to join the playoffs. And then, what else stands out to me here? Looks like the Lions have 2 easy games coming up or the Tigers have a couple easy games after playing the Lions before they play the Bears. And then here's the Vipers. They're going against 2 0-2 teams, so the Vipers could go 4-0, playing the Dragons and the Wolverines next. And then the Wolverines, and that's it. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the week 2 recap video. Vote for week 2 MVP, and that's pretty much it. We're gonna have a game on Thursday, and then the rest of the games are on Sunday. And good luck. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. And enjoy week 3. Take care.